Welcome to the meeting of the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I am obliged to inform you that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view the meeting using the link on the agenda. Apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from councillors Rob Wilson and David Bassner is the substitute, Julian Dean and Pam Mosley. We have no other apologies. Item 2, disclosable interest. Members are reminded that they must declare their disclosable pecuniary interest and other registrable or non-registrable interest in any matter being considered at the meeting, as set out in Appendix B of the Members' Code of Conduct, and consider if they should leave the room prior to the item being considered. Does anybody have any interest? No? Okay, we'll move on. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. To consider the minutes of the following previous meeting, which was the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 25th of January. The Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, it was a call-in cabinet decision on the Sports Village transformation held on the 9th of February. And the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, calling cabinet decision on parking tariffs, operations and development held on the 19th of February. Does anybody wish to say anything about the minutes, or are we all happy with them?
Can I just raise a point on minutes?
Yes, David. Shall I put your speaker up over my
Yes, sorry, I'd just like to raise an issue on the minutes of the 9th of February.
Yes.
And in the recommendations, it says future plans for quarry pool would be, future plans for the quarry pool would be considered at a later date. And I wondered if we got any idea when that later date might be.
I'm afraid I can't answer that.
Yeah, could we pass it on to the relevant?
Yes, you could perhaps ask Mac Barrow if he can come back with the date, and if he does, come back to all members.
Yeah.
Yes, Roger.
I've got a few points of order on the meeting that was held on the 19th of February and the subsequent meeting at Cabinet, but I'm not querying the minutes at all. So if you want to adopt the minutes, I'll raise the points of order after those minutes have been adopted.
Okay, thank you. If I can just check, is that a suitable time, or is it something that you need to go to Tim Collard with? I just want to check if it's a legal thing.
If I don't receive answers today, I will be raising formal complaints and questions with both the monitoring officer and with the chief executive on what happened.
And I just ask again to clarify, who do you need answers from? Because is there anyone here that can give you answers to the questions?
The answers, Chairman, which is why I want to pose them to you first.
Fine.
If you have no knowledge of it, I can then go up, but I need to ask you first.
Okay.
In case you are aware of any reasons why.
Okay. Could somebody move the minutes, please? Dave Davenport to move the minutes. Seconder, Ed Potter. Everybody happy? Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Right, Roger. If you want to bring up something to do with the minutes, you are now welcome.
Thank you, Chairman. In the Constitution, Part 4, page D69, and it's revised on the 29th of January. It states, if having considered the decision, the Scrutiny Committee is still concerned about it, then it may refer it back to the decision-making person or body for reconsideration, setting out in writing the nature of its concerns or a further matter to full council. If referred to the decision maker, they shall then reconsider within a further 15 working days, amending the decision or not before adopting a final decision. The parking strategy was referred back, and it took 58 days for that to be considered by the appropriate cabinet meeting, not 15 days. And I wondered if you knew why that was not correct and why the Constitution has not been followed, which is a big difference in 15 to 58 days. Also, at the cabinet meeting that was held, to look at it, the report was presented by the cabinet member. Nobody from Scrutiny officially turned up for that meeting or spoke. On the agenda, it said Scrutiny Committee, and there was no mention. The report then was presented by the cabinet member, and there was an interpretation made by somebody of what the minutes were, because the actual cabinet paper states that this report considers issues raised by scrutiny committee in relation to the original report. There is no formal minute yet, as yet, but the issues they asked to be re-examined were. There were other issues there, and there are issues raised during the meeting, but there was nobody there to actually raise that. All that was issued was the A to K, which was an interpretation by some person, I'm not sure who, of what the issues were. If one reads the minutes now, which have been published, there were other discussions which took place. And I asked the question, as you're aware, at the scrutiny meeting before that one, where was the report? And I was told it was not yet ready for it. Constitution says 15 days. At the meeting that you were not able to be at, I asked why nobody from scrutiny was there, and the answer that came back, there's no need because we got it here, and we have listened to the report and we have done it. The formal minutes, which was just being adopted, show there were other issues discussed at it, which if there'd been somebody from scrutiny committee there, may well have brought up. And I actually query whether the decision made by the cabinet is legal or not.
Right. Two things. One, please accept my apologies. I would absolutely certainly have been at scrutiny, but I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
But
so
there are a vice chairman and there are other members.
That is
which
true.
There's 11 members here.
But I wasn't aware when I went away that it was actually going to be on the paper. So my apology, probably my error that I wasn't there. Well, it wasn't my error, I was way but I do think those issues that you have brought up do require Miranda and Tim Collard to look at them. So if we can, I don't know if you want to directly email them or you want your concerns raised by the committee. Well, I said committee, it's not the whole committee. So whether you would like Tom to or
can raise them, and I'll ask officers to take it forward, but I will raise it as well to it, because it's issues were way we work with partners and stakeholders was mentioned at the scrutiny meeting. Lack of evidence for many statements was not picked up. Need to restrict rules, rises to inflation was not picked up. Effect on charging for Sunday parking for Shropshire was not picked up. The report which went to cabinet, and I said at the cabinet meeting, and I used the words, this seems to be very Shrewsbury, and does not look at the rural areas and what the parking rises mean to that.
Forgive me, there's a lot of repetition there of what you said in the meeting of what you've since said. But please,
that was not said to the cabinet.
Do please take that to Tim Collard and Miranda Gerard. And it'd be interesting to see what the comments are that come back. I wonder if we could all be.
But as chairman of the scrutiny committee, do you feel that there should have been somebody there to represent the views from the scrutiny committee, but no invitation was obviously sent?
I wasn't here.
I know. So was the vice chairman invited? Was anybody else invited to put the views from the scrutiny committee?
I think we have to see what the legal opinion is on that, because the report was there. But we'll see what comes back from Tim Collard and Miranda. There's no good me saying yes, no, whatever.
As chairman, nobody approached you as wanting to find a substitute or even attend that meeting. Is that correct?
It's relevant, really.
You remarked that you did not know
Roger,
that it was going to that meeting.
Roger, you were trying to make an issue here, and there isn't.
There is an issue.
And we will seek clarification from the legal team, and I'm now moving on.
Yeah.
Okay.
One last question, Chairman. When it opened, you said apologies, you were in the middle of something. Yeah. I've got no, and we all take holidays, but you were said that you were not aware that it was going to that cabinet meeting.
I wasn't aware, but that might have been my fault.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So there's nothing else on the minutes, I assume, because we finished with them. Moving on to item 4, public question time. We don't have any. Member question time. We don't have it, I don't believe. No, okay. Before we move on to item 6, progress against the actions from the social housing and housing strategy report. If I can just say, Casey Dark will be joining us. She was travelling between these things, and she will be joining us at some point. And I will therefore, on what I'm going to mention now, go back to her on the item I'm going to mention. But I'd like to pick up with you, Jane, and it's fortuitous that I've got you both today, because as you'll be aware, there's a half-finished housing development which is being let, and Tricast Construction was employed by Shropshire Townsend Rural Housing to build 13 houses off Racecourse, Credley and Shrewsbury. Work stopped in February and Tricast went out of business. One resident I know has spoken and said that it was very disconcerting. What I'd like to ask you is, what do you know about this? What is happening? What the issues are? Is it going to be finished? And I'll leave it then. You can tell us everything you know, and I'll probably go back to Tracy as I say.
That's fine. Thank you very much. And I'm glad to speak about this. So we're very pleased that we had our scheme at Racecourse Crescent, was the council housing scheme being delivered by Star on the council's behalf. Star and also Cornavy Developments Limited, both council companies, have made a point of trying to work with local contractors, small, medium-sized enterprises, on the basis that way more of the Shropshire pound gets spent in Shropshire. So whereas if you give it to you Wilmot Dixon's, not to sort of name names as such, but the larger house builders, basically, you're more likely to see subcontractors and contractors coming in from outside of the county, and so there's been a conscious effort to try and focus field activity with our local contractors. One of the risks of doing that, unfortunately, though, is that they tend to be smaller contractors and therefore more subject to the vagaries of the market. And the construction industry has been particularly hit by construction cost inflation and impacts on their ability to stay afloat, some of the smaller contractors in particular. Something similar happened last year and the year before for Cornavy, when one of their contractors went under as well. And they had to re-procure, get another contractor on site for their Ellesmere scheme. So this is something that can happen in the construction industry, unfortunately, and especially if you use smaller, more local contractors. And it's a sort of a risk that the Star has decided to take, though they will have to kind of keep reviewing this as a strategy if this comes up again. So Tricast unfortunately did go into administration, and work stopped on site in February, as you're aware. So Star had worked with Tricast because they knew that something was afoot with them. They tried to renegotiate the contract to see if there was a different way of supporting Tricast in order to potentially take some of the risk on, so that the risk didn't all fall on Tricast, that sort of thing, which is what you would normally do as a sort of a conscientious client trying to sort of make sure that the scheme went ahead. Unfortunately, that didn't work. Tricast went under, and Star is now in the process of procuring an alternative contractor to complete the scheme. So the scheme is not at risk itself. It will be delivered. The funding is there to deliver it. The planning consent is there to deliver. Everything's in place to deliver it. And actually, it's very well advanced. If you've been down there to see it and witness that, it's just unfortunately there's a bit of a gap in the programme whilst that re-procurement happens. So I'd like to just provide some reassurance to residents and to members that there's no intention of there being any kind of undue delay. It is just unfortunately this gap whilst this procurement exercise is repeated.
Okay, and do you have a timescale of any sort?
I don't have, because I only got your email just before the meeting, so I wasn't coming up, but I'll find that out for you.
If you would, please, and if all members can be informed. And I know David in particular has an interest. David, would you like to speak?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. This development is within my ward number there in Shrewsbury. And I think a couple of points really. One is that Tricast are a bigger firm than I think most people realise, because there was a development in Gabelling actually, which is also in a similar state, Racecourse Crescent. And I think there's other developments across the north of England which they're involved in. I know that from previous Radio Shropshire did an actual investigation into this. So I'm aware that perhaps they're a bit bigger than just a Shropshire-based organisation, although obviously I do appreciate that policy. I think it's right and proper. We should actually support local businesses. The other thing I would like to raise is the concern. I've spoken to local residents in the area about it, and their worry is about security. And I have been in touch with Star Housing about this. But perhaps you can reassure me that there will be proper security there to make sure that there is not trouble, if you like, or any antisocial behaviour as a result of that site being kind of empty, really not being worked on at the moment.
Just to ask, has there been any report of antisocial behaviour? Just to be clear, because it'd be good to know.
No, there hasn't at the moment, but I've been in touch with Star about it, and they said they were organising people to go and kind of keep an eye on it. And the residents report to me there haven't seen anybody there, and maybe they just haven't. The actual kind of inspections have taken place, but I would like to be reassured that that is happening.
I'm very happy to follow that up with Star and just confirm with them what the arrangements are that they've got in.
I'm sure local residents will want to know exactly what's happening, because there's nothing worse than an untidy building site.
Yeah, well, thanks for raising it.
Yeah, it's fine. And as I say, it's fortuitous that we have Jane and also Tracy joining us afterwards. So I don't know where planning would come into that now, do you? No, I don't think probably would. Okay, thank you, David. Anybody else? Yeah, please, Rosemary.
Yeah, thanks. So Jane, can I just ask you, are we expecting there to be any particular financial losses that Star or Navy will incur as a result of any liquidation that goes on materials, etc.?
Well, typically in this sort of situation, they will try and retrieve as much as they can from the outgoing contractor, and certainly everything that's on site already, would be secured for the purposes of the council's ownership, because it's to deliver the council's scheme there under Star's guidance direction. I can't honestly say if there is a loss associated with it. It's quite possible, simply because there is a delay, and if you're reprocuring, then inflation has happened between this procurement and the last procurement, so there's perfectly significant likelihood really that there will be a higher cost associated with the completion of the scheme. It has been quite substantially built out, but there is still a fair bit of work to do. So it is possible that there will be a cost associated with this, unfortunately.
It'd be interesting to know whether they're actually insured against this sort of thing, because that would hopefully cover any costs. They wouldn't make any losses. But do you know whether they're insured?
There is a degree of insurance, and there are also bonds that they take out as well.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions about that? No. Okay. In that case, we will move on to the agenda on item 6. Progress against the actions from Social Housing and Housing Strategy Group. It's really interesting to have you here to discuss this. So if you'd like to present your report.
Thank you very much. So I won't go through a lot of detail on this, but obviously members of the committee are aware that a report went to Cabinet in September last year and then came to scrutiny on the 9th of November last year to discuss matters of delivery in respect of housing. And 6 recommendations came out of the conversations that had arisen from a previous scrutiny work focusing on housing strategy. And those are the 6 recommendations that are listed in this report, which I won't go through again because you can see them set out for you there. The action plan that is appended to this report sets out what we undertook to follow through against those 6 recommendations. And there have been some changes since the last meeting that I'd just like to highlight for you for awareness. Under recommendation 1, which is about the revised allocations policy, making sure that registered providers are adhering to it, there is a new action there, which is that formal meetings are now established with our local registered providers, housing associations, which are running as of this month, and quarterly after that, which will go through the nominations group, just make sure that we're always getting all the homes that we're entitled to, and that our people who we nominate into those properties are getting the right priority. So that is happening from now on. In terms of the further actions, there's just an amendment to the second action on that item 1, which is just that the upgrade to the Abritas computer system that sits behind HomePoint has been slightly delayed. So that action is going to be concluded now by June. We hoped it would all be in place by now. Unfortunately, that's an experience that we sometimes have with computer systems. The second recommendation is looking at the importance of the strategic housing function and making sure that it's linked to other activities of the council, because there are lots of benefits to linking across these different areas. An action that's completed on that is that the development colleagues have now joined Housing Executive Board meetings. Housing Executive Board is an internal officer meeting where we look at all aspects of housing and its strategy and development of new strategies and things that we need to be taking into consideration. So it's quite important that we have that economic aspect to housing delivery. It's a key part of our economic growth as a county. So that's been an important thing to bring forwards. There's been an amendment to the second action under further actions, which is looking at the type of affordability of housing, a supplementary planning document to capture this. And this has been delayed, unfortunately, to May next year. And the reason for that is that it has to follow on from the local plan, because that's been delayed. This has been delayed, which is a bit unfortunate, but it does specifically link to the local plan and is a planning document rather than a housing strategy per se. It's important that it does have that link as well, because that gives it a greater weight, legal weight, when we're looking at new planning applications. We've got a couple of new actions against this as well. We've refreshed the work programme for the Housing Executive Board to make sure that we focus in more sharply on the strategic priorities of the council. And we are also going to be consolidating with the proposed new affordable intermediate housing strategy. This is a new strategy that we want to see developed, specifically looking at the rural nature of the county, because it's not really something that we've captured and examined before in any detail, the rurality of the county. And we think this is an important thing for us to pick up. On the third of the recommendations, which is looking at place-based approach, we've reviewed the proposed action around the tenancy strategy, but what we've realised is that what we've got at the moment effectively achieves what we need it to. So we're going to set that aside now and won't be progressing that. But there is a new action we're picking up, which is to review the Housing Commission priorities. What these are the statement of what we would like to see delivered by our housing partners, registered providers, Foregate and the Start Housing, where we're quite specific about the sort of accommodation that we want to see delivered, like specialist accommodation or different sizes of accommodation or geographical locations of accommodation, so that we're really clear. And as time moves on, as these priorities change, that we update it. The fourth recommendation is looking at social housing, acknowledging the specific needs of rural settlements. They draft independent living and specialist accommodation strategy has now been picked up, because particularly there was a point under this about preventing admissions to hospital and care homes, and this is now going some forward plan for cabinet consideration. It says on here on the 21st of February. That's actually been delivered, as it says. The preventing homelessness and rough sleeping strategy is also out to consultation now. And in terms of further actions, those two consultations are progressing, and the affordable intermediate rural housing strategy will be added into the housing strategy as a whole. And on the fifth recommendation, we were asked to look at a range of innovative funding projects, potentially different ways of working, access land. Under this, we've initiated meetings with health and social care colleagues who are looking at affordable and intermediate housing options in a rural setting. I think there's some progress that we can make around that, which may be quite interesting. In terms of all of the other recommendations and actions that are listed, those are all actions still in progress. So we're working on those across the range of the different teams in the council, and we'll be happy to come back and report on those as we work our way through them.
Thank you. It's very important, obviously, to have an update on the recommendations. And one of the important things about scrutiny is that we should follow up and make sure that those actions and recommendations we made are followed up on. So it's really good to have that, and I look forward to your next report. Does anybody have any questions, Jane? Yes, Roger. Oh, David, be you first.
No, it's right.
It's a question on number 3 in the actions to date, the last of those 4 bullet points, and then it's picked up at the last bullet point on page 16. We acknowledge the need for continued work in creating a housing strategy for Shrewsbury linking to the big town plan. Ongoing, there's no target date or extra information that could be there. It is ongoing, and I see it's those two bullet points are together. I don't know if Councillor Vasby was going to ask the same sort of question, sorry there. But yeah, and the big town plan and the local plan has got a lot of housing around Shrewsbury. So it is important that the big town plan and that amalgamates together. So is it just ongoing, or is there any indication for dates of when that would be ready?
Yes, it's a good question, and I've had to get the data. I would have put it down, but I need to find that for you and bring it back hopefully to the next meeting. But there is work progressing on that, and it is something we're really keen to focus in on from a housing perspective, in terms of making sure that we have the right mix of homes in Shrewsbury, especially in the town centre, as part of the big town plan. That we think about, you know, the walkability of the town centre. There's opportunities there for older people, for example, to live in the town centre where there's easy access to resources, to facilities and services. There's also a need to have a mix of affordable as well as market housing. So we want to make sure that we capture all of that in that housing piece for the Shrewsbury Big Town Plan. So it's something that we've picked up and had a number of conversations about, but we've not progressed it to the point that we're able to share something. But I'll try and get a date for that and put it against it.
If I can ask, gentlemen, Mr. Potter and Mr. Wynne, are you actually looking at the report on your phones, or are you doing something else? Okay. Very disconcerting when you look at people and they're scrolling.
I was doing it before, thinking I was looking at the computers. Yeah.
Okay, so be warned, everybody.
I bet you want to vote.
Yeah. The portfolio holder, Chris Schofield, is actually not in attendance, but actually on screen. Is there anything you want to add to any of this, or?
Not really, Joyce. I mean, everyone knows the local plan's not coming out for could be early next year, could be a bit later than that. So I mean, but the Shrewsbury big plan, as the ladies just said. I mean, I don't know if there is a date for that, to be perfectly honest with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Jane, I feel like it's in competent hands with you. You're doing a really good job. You know what you're doing. And I'm sure I do. David, fantastic question.
Yes, it's not a direct, it's a related question really on the report. Just on recommendation 1 about home points and about the computer upgrade. Will that result in improved service for users? Because I know that lots of people find the existing system quite clunky.
Yeah.
And a lot of comments about that. And especially if you're looking at every week, it's quite a rigmarole and go through all the properties which are, you know, on offer, if you like.
Absolutely, that is the intention. So personally, I haven't been very close to that programme of activity upgrading Abritas, but that's absolutely the intention. So the version of Abritas that we have at the moment is quite a few versions old. So it should see quite a significant visible kind of uplift for users when the new version comes on board. We have to go through a process of testing it first, and it's quite a complex system with lots of data in it, lots of different users accessing it. So it is a bit of a complex process to get it up and running. But yes, that should everything costs with the experience.
I think people were very grateful for that. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Steve.
Again, not directly to do with it really, but while we've got the portfolio, we called it here. How, with the local plan not being signed off till sometime next year, are we getting too close to having a land supply that's going to be a free for all if we don't get it signed off soon?
I don't think that's the case, Steve, because I think it was within the next 18 months, I think the next local plan starts coming through as well.
Okay,
there's enough land within that plan up until 2038, I think it is. There were 500 houses short, and there's enough for that to be within the plan.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Gary.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question from Councillor Vasquez regarding the advertising system. Can we not have some sort of a suggestion system on there? For example, I'm on Home Point and I bid for properties. And my local need isn't taken into account until I get to the stage where a bid is accepted, and then the local need criteria comes in, and I fail on local need. So surely local need should be considered at the beginning to not to allow you to build on a property where local need would apply.
I can take that away. I don't know whether that's something that will change under the upgraded average system, but I can certainly put that forward to the team and see if that's something they can agree with.
Just a quick question. Have we looked at buying houses to use for social housing? Given that the fact that we haven't got enough housing for the people that need it.
Yeah.
I think I need to leave the room. You've got to discuss that. Because I believe Star are negotiating with my landlord, so I'm pop out.
Right, okay, sorry about that. It won't be long. Just a quick answer, sorry about that. Yeah.
But no, the council does buy housing. It does at the moment. So, I mean, the main constraint on us is the amount of funding that we have available to spend on purchasing property.
Yeah.
So we lose properties through the right to buy that come out of the council's ownership.
Yeah.
And when we get a receipt from each of those disposals, it's not the full value of the property that's been sold.
No.
And also typically it wouldn't necessarily pay for the full value of the replacement unit as a result. So we are building new build, we are buying properties, we sometimes buy new build, or sometimes we will buy properties that are just existing properties out in the stock. For example, former right to buys, there's a requirement for them to
Come back.
and give us first refusal, if you like, on purchasing them, and we do buy those.
Yeah, just there seems to be, market at the moment is static.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether now would be a good time to buy, because people are reducing prices, and whether the council is buying, that would be a good time. But who makes those decisions?
Well, it's a combination of the council and Star Housing. So Star has responsibility for the housing revenue account in terms of how it manages it day to day, and that includes the maintenance of the existing stock, but it's also picking up on the development of new homes and also the purchase of new properties. But we do that collaboratively, because there's also a role in there for the estates team and our legal crews.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Roger.
It's a question concerning the right to buy. I think I've read recently where the government is changing and no longer allowing authorities to keep all their right to buy proceeds. Are the council making any representations to government, about this change in policy, and would it affect what Shropshire Council is able to do along those lines if the government start to take, I think it was 50%, was it, or something like this, of any right to buy proceeds that are paid?
Local authorities have never been able to keep 100% of the right to buy proceeds. So there's always been a proportion that had to be returned to government. But there has been a change on that recently. And at the moment, we haven't put forward any comment about that. But that's something we can consider doing.
Okay, thank you, Jen. I assume we have no more questions. Yes, Gary?
Do I need to declare an interest?
No.
That's either.
No. No, definitely not on that, I'm sure. I am right. Don't get me in trouble.
I need to act it before anything happens. And
Yes, okay then. Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Jane. I look forward to you coming back to us, because I think everything will be done by then. You can help. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're now moving on to item 7. Is Tracy available yet? I don't think she is. I think what we're going to do, because she's not with us, she will be with us any minute. She will be with us any minute. We'll just check she's not there.
Just give
If she isn't, we'll move on to the works programme. While she's doing that, if I just tell everyone, we were going to look at the river quality. You'll be interested in that, Rosemary. We were going to look at this meeting at the river quality, but it's now going to come to the July meeting, because the Environment Agency and National Resources Wales launched a consultation. I'm sure most of you are aware of that, a few weeks ago, which has now come back on the Severn Valley Water Management Scheme, which Shropshire Council and Parish Council are also involved in. So this would fit in well with the work that's being done. And we can supply the link for the consultation for members, though it's gone, if they want to look at it, if they want they were consulting on. We got Tracy.
She's having a few connection problems, so she's
Right,
going to try again in 5
Well,
minutes.
move on to the work programme and come back to that, if that's okay with everyone. Yes, Roger?
It is a question on the work programme, Chairman.
Yes.
In the minutes, which was just agreed, there's a reference there about the Standing Climate Change and Environment Task and Finish Group.
Yeah.
I attended with another hat on, a meeting between scrutiny chairs,
Yeah.
where decisions were made about task and finish groups.
Yeah.
In the minutes just agreed, it says that the scrutiny manager reiterated that the Standing Climate Change and Environment Task and Finish Group would not be time limited for the year. Rather, it would run through the year and report back to the Economy, Environment, Overview and Scrutiny Committee at regular points.
Okay.
Is that task and finish group still running? I've not seen any report on the scrutiny chairs about future work programmes
No.
and the finishing of all task and finish groups,
Yes.
which was agreed by the scrutiny chairs, but has never come back to any scrutiny committee to inform them what is happening to any task and finish groups which are running.
Okay. I'll go to Tom for that one. He's got inside knowledge.
It was a member decision rather than a committee decision.
Decision, but it obviously has been discussed with him what is happening with your colleagues. So if you'd like to colour it in, please.
I think the scrutiny chairs meeting took place, that Roger referred to, took place after the meeting of this committee where the Standing Task and Finish Group was discussed. The member decision in the scrutiny chairs meeting was that task and finish groups would not be operating in the council this year. At the moment, if that's the basis we continue on, the Standing Task and Finish Group, which was agreed by this committee here at this meeting in January, I think it was, is probably covered by that decision. I think at the moment, we need to be reports back that explain that I will have those conversations and see what we can do to sort it out. But at the moment, so my understanding is that task and finish groups were agreed not to be pursued at that scrutiny chairs meeting.
Roger, I'll back to you. Thank you, Rosemary.
If I can, Chairman. So where does that leave scrutiny committees then? As I understand it, and it was only the scrutiny chairs who had votes at that meeting. I attended as an observer, so only the 4 scrutiny chairs and maybe not even the vice chairman had votes. It was brought up and decided with little discussion, little input from anybody else. And I am concerned that a change in policy is being put in place without any consultation and thought about the consequences of scrutiny work, which is important for council to go forward, especially in this new challenging year that we are in, because there may be times when task and finish groups do need to meet to look at what is happening, but the decision was made, there won't be any. Now, to me, that is a wrong place to do it, and I'm not sure how to challenge that here or council or whatever. I just do not know, because I as a scrutiny member, I am unhappy that I am being hampered as a scrutiny person in doing the work that should be done by scrutiny committees. Do we need, or will there be a need, because scrutiny committees can be called by any 2 members on a scrutiny committee, to go back to the old word and the C word, which I don't like using, but can use it if it's needed, to call scrutiny committees back to do things rather than a more efficient and what was considered workable task and finish groups.
I think, Roger, it's been extremely valuable the last 6 months on the task and finish groups we've had, because we've all seen good results from them. But I think, unfortunately, we have to be realistic. The council is in financial difficulties. We are unsure at the moment what exactly is going to happen to the scrutiny team and other members of staff. So I think at the moment it's a very, very difficult place. We don't know whether if task and finish groups can't be run because of lack of finance and lack of officers, then it won't happen. Anything that takes place will have to take place at the moment in scrutiny committees. I wouldn't know if you have an issue with that way you would take that. You were actually in that meeting. So I don't really know what else to say, to be honest with you. Rosemary.
Yeah, obviously, I agree with some things that Roger said, and it's a loss of not have task and finish routes. But I just wanted to comment that in the case of the climate change scrutiny committee or task and finish group, there is, and as far as I know, it still exists, a climate change advisory board, which I'm a member of.
Yeah.
It's not a scrutiny committee, but it is a committee that sits with the advisory and the climate change team, which of course is as well. But that covers a lot of the work that we might cover perhaps in the task and finish. So some of that work might be addressed there.
Yeah. Has anybody discussed this at all with you, Tom? Do you know what's happening with that?
In relation to the standard climate change task and finish group.
Well,
Nothing on that. I would say that I suppose if you're running a task finish group, you're running it in scrutiny powers and scrutiny arrangements. So it might be that it has, one of the conversations we had with the task force leader, Adrian, was actually about scrutiny using its pre-decision role to look at policy developments. So what the particular thing, which I think has been very pertinent over the past year in relation to the impact of climate change, would be resilience and adaptation and an adaptation strategy. And could scrutiny help inform what that strategy might do and cover. And that might still be something that can be picked up by this committee where it looked at flooding, for example, is program. So there would be a way for a scrutiny function of work alongside the advisory board in a mutually beneficial way without duplicating. But equally, if one of the other didn't run, then there would be scope to make sure the main outcomes were not lost.
If we progress with the work programme, I don't think we've got Tracy yet, have we? No, it's okay. We'll carry on with the work programme. If I can just throw some things in and then come to members. A couple of things I've written down that I thought would be worthwhile the committee looking at, and I look to you as to whether you should look at them. Devolving ground maintenance to town and parish council. Perhaps you could have a member briefing followed by scrutiny, and this would add value. The first one I want to mention. The second one is community safety, CCTV in every town in Shropshire, apart from Shrewsbury. The town council monitors everywhere else, so we need to look at that. Flooding, what could the council do to help disseminate info and look at the Environment Agency role and how it could be improved by joint comms. The other one I got temporary accommodation, a question mark on that. As I say, the river quality one will come back in July. So your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think point one is absolutely
devolving ground maintenance.
Oh, sorry. Devolving ground maintenance, not only ground maintenance, but land spend, going back to that, because as we all know, town and parish councils provide a lot of work cheaper than Shropshire Council.
Yes, Paul.
Temporary accommodation, that'd be a good one to look into. I think we need to know more about it, and I think that I did look into it.
Yeah.
Which I did say.
We would have to look at it in committee. It wouldn't sort of be anything other than that, would it?
No, I mean the approach which was outlined at the chair's meeting would be an all-member briefing. That might be an option for the members of the committee. So if it's all-member briefing on temporary accommodation or looking at devolving grounds maintenance or leisure or other matters to town and parish councils, the committee members could come together or have a virtual meeting afterwards and see what specifically you might want to explore. I would suggest you want to have that briefing far enough in advance of a committee meeting so that you can make sure that the people you want to hear from, the reports you want to have, the information you want to have are available for the meeting, but the scrutiny work under the proposed way of working would be in the committee meeting. So you would be dealing with it in a meeting held in public.
Right. And Roger, don't just ask you for a second. I think the best way to do this, other than go through everything and then go and vote on everything separately, could we take the items as they come? Would everybody be happy to do the one on devolving ground maintenance? Is everybody happy with that?
Can I come in on that?
Yes, you can, Roger.
It was two items, one for me, but there's also the ground maintenance, in that there's the environmental maintenance grant already in place, which is shared.
It's not enough.
That is cash
Pardon?
strapped.
It's not enough.
Yeah, that is cash strapped,
Yeah.
and the amount that will be given devolved to parish councils as 50-50 basis for those under 10,000 is capped, and it will be divided by the ones who are applying. That could be increased to do it, to get that extra money out of parish and town councils. Parish and town councils have now set their budgets for this current financial year, and to suggest that they take on more ground maintenance, it will be very hard, especially for the smaller parish and town councils, because of their finances. Other members may have parishes in their area who have money, but a lot of the parishes that I know of do not have money because they attempted to keep their council tax increase to a minimum because of the cost of living. But there is, if the environmental maintenance grant was increased, you get 50% buy-in from parish and town councils, not the total.
I've got very mixed emotions about this, Roger, because over the years we've looked at parish councils, what they've got in their bank accounts, and they still take money from us. And that amount of money they have is going up. I know. I've done that.
All that I'll say.
I mean, we're talking six figures. A lot of parish councils and town councils have got. Not all of them, I admit.
I don't know how big parish councils that you have. My parish councils only have a preset of 25,000. And if they had a six-figure sum in there, the auditor would be asking them, why are you keeping that much money?
As they should be, absolutely.
I think it's deeper than that, and it's nothing to do with how much they've got in the bank. They can deliver a better job than Shropshire Council can, and I've seen it happen so many times. Point one. But the other point that Paul's made, I think, oh, sorry, you're going through.
Responsive, and the other thing is it's responsive, isn't it, to council, if councils are doing it. If you bring them up, you're more likely to get it than
my parish council want to take jobs on. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're all agreeing we need to look at that. Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
So that is going on the programme. The second thing you mentioned, Roger.
Yeah, I'd look at potholes and communication with members and with parish and town councils, because there is an example going on today where pothole repairs are being carried out. The diversion route, which was notified to me yesterday morning, mid-morning, when work started at 8 o'clock. One of the diversion route is along a very, very narrow lane, only 6 foot wide.
Yeah.
And if vehicles use that as a diversion route, I said, I'm taking my phone off the hook. Nobody communicated with the local member to say this was taking place, and what do you think about this diversion route? And it does need that communication to do it.
We have looked at this numerous times in the past, so I am against that, because there is a system in place that is working better. Fix My Street is so much better than it was, Roger, and it is more reactive. And honestly, it's across the country, isn't it? The problem of potholes every time you turn the TV on, wherever it is.
Okay.
I got a feeling I know what you're going to say.
Well, maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, I Fix My Street is great. And for my sins, I'm a regular kind of going through Fix My Street. And one of the things that's come to me is the number of pothole repairs repeated again and again and again and again. And people saying that this would have been repaired a month ago or 2 months ago, whatever it is. And also some of the quality of the actual repairs, which are probably obviously linked.
Yeah.
And that to me is something which is bit different to what we've discussed in the past. And I think that could do with examination.
Yeah, and if I can just say, I want to move on from pottery. I can just say, Richard Madeley on TV this morning was saying on his small stretch of road, he's got a lot of potholes, and one of them's been filled in 17 times over the last few months. So it's a national problem. It is our problem as well for our area, and I do believe we are doing our best to get to the bottom of it. So personally, I do not want to look at that yet.
I'm just thinking, listening to that, was two elements to what Roger raised. There is the potholes.
Yeah.
But actually, I think the bigger issue, and having listened to the work over the past year by the scrutiny committees and scrutiny members, is about local member engagement. It might be that it's not necessarily for this committee, but one of the things that we're starting to look through now for the annual reports for last year is it's come up a few times in different committees work in terms of local member engagement.
Communication, you mean?
Well, it's communicating. Yeah, I think it's actually involving local members in some of what's happening.
But I'm not sure a lot of this stuff is not Shropshire Council as such. It's the water board, it's electricity, and they've been fined for what they've done for closing roads and everything. Yes, I do. I'm interested to hear.
I'm with Tom on it.
Yeah.
Communication is the key.
Mm.
And I think earlier intervention and talking to local members, using local knowledge, would probably give the council a fortune in the long run.
I absolutely agree with you, but I'm not quite sure that is going to work, because I know in the past when it's been brought up at scrutiny, and I've had issues, I've been spoken to, but then it's sort of forgotten. So really what you actually need is a set of rules that when you're doing a job, this is what you do, B, C, D. As far as members are concerned. I'll go that way because you haven't spoken so much.
Yeah. Sure, I still feel pleased about that. Just looking at Steve.
Yeah.
Are our local gangs, Shropshire Council gangs, doing a better job than the contractors?
Our local gangs are doing a better job than contractors by a long way.
So that, I think it's been talked about before.
They have.
So I don't think we have to go over it, but that is sort of common knowledge.
Yeah.
We need more local gangs, but that's another thing.
No, and they have increased them there over the last year, haven't they? Communication, I would be quite happy to have a look at that.
It might take me two or 3 minutes, but it is communication, and it is working the local member and the officer. I was contacted, and Councillor Ruth Houghton was contacted by the appropriate officer about a month, 6 weeks ago, about a certain road, a C road, a through route being closed for 6 weeks whilst they did repairs.
Yes.
And it's 10 miles down the road, and the diversion is likely to be via Welshpool. We sat down with the officer and we've agreed that every day when the work is going on, there'll be signs going up, road ahead closed, 10 miles, 8 miles, 12 miles, 15 miles, so that people using that road, local residents and others wanting to use that road, knew which section of road was going to be worked on, rather than just the blank road ahead closed, with no information. And that we sat down and we worked a timetable out, and the local businesses there know what is happening, and it's all laid out. It hasn't happened yet, but that sort of communication is what is needed for residents and members.
So what we need is to look at the protocols that are in place, if there are any, and if there aren't, we need to put protocols in place that members are engaged with any road. Because any problem's going to be, of course, if it's an emergency job, and then you've got no chance. Gary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we need to, not necessarily potholes per se, but the quality of pothole repairs. There was talk back in the middle of last year of a new machine that was grind it out and injected with full of special tar and all the rest of it. When I lived down in Belvedere, outside Belvedere School, they filled in 11 potholes 7 times in the last 6 weeks by hand, with a guy pulling up with a pickup truck, pouring coal tar on and tapping it down with a stamping hammer.
Here.
The other choice you got, the other example you got rather, is the town centre, Market Hall. Caden Gas dug up in front of the Market Hall 14 weeks ago. It was dug up for 10 weeks. They eventually filled it back in. It's now got security fences around it because they broke all the slabs, and they're not allowed to put tarmac down where the slabs were, and they're not re-slabbing. It's been 14 weeks at least. So it's the quality of work and the timescales they did that we need to scrutinise.
Well, I think we've got the gist of it. We don't really want stories about your areas and what's happening in them as such.
It's not my area, it's the town centre.
Well, no, any area. What we really want is to find a solution to the problem. So it's obviously something we should be looking at. But as I said, potholes, I don't know.
It's the quality of repairs, and it's the contractors, Caden Gas, electrics, the waterworks, the quality of the repair when they dig a road up.
If we looked at it
In the pothole.
Yeah.
if we looked at it in the past, I mean, the problem's still there. It's obviously not working, is it?
No,
It is, yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, I'm saying that the problem isn't working.
no. Well, I would suggest we look at the protocols that are in place for member engagement when it comes to roadworks prior to works being done and diversions being put in place. That sound all right, Tom? Or is that a bit?
I think I'd go for the protocols of working with local members and local member engagement, and then you pick some examples of particular issues you might have, and some examples of good practice. If what Roger's described is good,
Yeah.
let's use good practice to reinforce positive behaviour as opposed to necessarily going after.
Yeah. Yeah, you're over that, Nick?
Yes, I agree, and I think it goes both ways as well, because when local members get in contact with the highways team or the people who are going to do the repairs, at the moment you get certain information through Fix My Street or when it's going to be done. But we could also look at how it can work both ways, so as members can be kept more informed and they can get answers quickly as well.
Yeah, sorry, I ignored you then.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you.
Sorry,
You were
Rose.
looking at me, but just to say that I've had a few instances, not to tell stories, but just to wonder if others have had this, where there have been roadworks on what are extremely busy roads going out to Shrewsbury and into Shrewsbury, where the protocols that should be in place for a third party blocking the road and putting lights in and things like that have not been followed. So the appropriate warnings and all that sort of thing haven't been done.
No.
And sometimes where things haven't been remade as they should be remade, damage other than that's to the road. And I'm just wondering what perhaps it's worth us looking if other people have had this as well.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's worth us looking at how does the council deal with that? Where a third party comes in and effectively does damage, doesn't follow.
Do you know, I think that is really good. The traffic light, the main traffic lights in Oswestry Town Centre, the road is actually sinking. This is on a road that's used constantly. It's sinking, it's potholed, it is absolutely dire, and it's third party that dug it up, it's Abbey. And I know we have actually fined some of these companies, but I want to know how we make them go back and correct it, because at the end of the day, it's expense to taxpayers if we end up doing it and they cause the problem. So I think we need to look at that.
To come in there, I have just reported what was sent me. And they were on it straight away, gave me a number as I rang up, and they were on it. So actually, you can pick up the 7
Right, okay. So don't pull that together. I have spotted you, Tracy. We've moved on to the work programme and we'll come back to, so you've got time to have a cup of tea.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, so, sorry, Tom. So do you want to pull all that together? What we've said, we've agreed.
Oh, yeah, we'll put it together. There's clearly going to be a bit more work to do in terms of thinking through the objectives and the impacts you want to get to, but I think that will probably flow through from the doing member briefings on all of these. We'll do more of it. I just wanted to flag as well, as a committee within your remit, there are a couple of areas that you might want to make sure you cover. So it's community safety, public sort of partnerships, flooding we've already picked up on potentially. In terms of the way it's potentially looking for the committee meetings at least in July, and I think two meetings actually into November. You've got for the July meeting, you'll have the developer contributions task force group report will come back. That work will be finishing at the beginning of May. There'll be the signs and banners follow-up focus, which I know that Joyce is very keen to see where that's getting to. The river water quality will be the follow-up as well in July. Potentially there we can link that to the briefing on the on flooding, but maybe depends on what's come out of the consultation which is taking place on the Severn Valley Water Management Scheme, whether that's too soon or not, but there's obviously quite a lot which that will potentially contribute to an impact on if you want to take into account water quality, particularly for River Severn as well. And then in November at the moment, obviously we're just about to hear from Tracy now around the New Housing Developers Task Force Group. Almost this is like a 6-month point after Tracy came back in November. 12-month point, which is where I think Tracy's hoping that most of this will be addressed by is November this year. And similarly, Jane coming back in November as well with the housing strategy. Obviously, we can start to put more work in, but from Jane's update, there are clearly some points of interest you want to get into from that action plan, and potentially make links to the health and scrutiny committee as well for developments around the health, social care, housing, related housing, which is there. But we'll do some work and bring that together. You had about 3 topics, I think, potentially from this year, which haven't been picked up, which were on engagement. And delivering a development partnership, which I think might well come fit with the piece that we talked about on the grounds maintenance and transport. But those areas, so we'll make sure that we keep the follow-up going on. We'll have a look at the work programme and build it in. And I think the next steps would be looking at level briefings as well. But we want to make sure this time with when work is being done by the council, so it's not creating additional work. And if we're doing pre-decision scrutiny, the meetings, it fits the timescales that the work's being done in by the council as well.
Thank you for pulling that together so well. Is everybody happy with that?
Well, I'm not happy, Chair, that we're not going to investigate the investigations that I suggested, because I think a lot of people are very concerned about potholes, and lots of people are going for damaged cars, and I think they would like us to investigate this thoroughly, because the reforms that have been talked about in the past are just not working.
I understand what you're saying, David. Absolutely. Did you want to? I can tell you want to say something, Roger.
Well, it's exactly the same comments that Councillor Vasmer said. Why don't we have here, besides their county manager, some of their local managers here to ask them what is happening and how to do it and how they go about their work. It is a combination, communications and how they do the work and their information exchange when they are on the job. There is widespread dissatisfaction with Shropshire. We need to do something about it because it is not good enough.
We are all very aware of it and the concerns of the public. And what I would ask, Tom, is it possible, please? I don't know whether I can't remember briefing, but would we be able to? We used to invite the people from Keir to come along and ask questions from members. Could we do that maybe as an online meeting? Would you Tracy, you can probably answer that one.
Yes, I mean, certainly in terms of the work that Keir does, I mean, it's something we can ask them to come along. I mean, clearly it's sort of under Andy Wire's area in terms of the whole sort of issues around potholes and maintenance, highway maintenance work. But they are a strategic partner with us. So and the work that they do and WSP, they support us in terms of the highway authority. So I'm sure they would be willing to come along. Absolutely. So yes, we can take that away and invite them.
I think my concern, Tracy, is that you almost feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall, because this has been brought up so many times. But they do what they do. We try and get them to do what we want them to do. And I know, as I said earlier, it's across the country, everyone's got this problem.
Not
We're not
that
alone.
word, Chair, sorry. Not that word.
No, but well, they've got exactly the same thing, Steve, excuse me,
Yeah.
they have got exactly the same thing across the country, whichever county you go to, everyone is saying exactly the same.
Quality of work. We're not talking about.
Yeah, there's good work, there's bad work in all the counties, we've seen good.
So what you actually do is you pay them back till they've got the jobs right. Don't
Are
pay-
you arguing with the chair?
No, I'm just saying that.
With jobs? I am joking. Yes, Paul.
The point is that we're in Cheshire, who works in Shropshire. So I live on the border and I go around
Yeah.
those places. They're worse.
Yeah.
And we've had 5 months rain. Exceptional wet weather spews out potholes.
Yeah.
It's hard work. And to repair them, it's more difficult because it's wet.
Yeah, I mean, there's a magic wand, and we as a council can physically, you have to do this, you have to do that. Give them the money to do it. It's not going to happen, is it? That's the truth of it. They do the best job that they can with the money they've got. Our officers do the best job that they can, I think. And maybe we need more involvement from town and parish councils, to be honest. But I'm going to park it there because we've talked about this for a while, and I know Tracy's dying to get her report out after she's rushed home like Sterling Moss. If anybody knows who that is, I'm a bit old. So can we vote on those things for the work programme for now? I'm not saying we can't add to it because maybe we can. We'll see where we go. Okay. Everybody happy with? I know we're not happy with it, but those of you who are happy, could you please vote? I'm going to move it. And thank you, Gary. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, David.
Did you bring hand up?
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, then. So that is what we have at the moment. Okay, so it can be moved in this. Cheer up, Roger.
I'm looking at the sun and thinking I should be out in the garden.
We're all.
You're born to sleep, right? You're right.
Long laugh. Okay. So we have your report on the progress against the actions from the new housing development work. If you'd like to present them, and then anybody questions can jump in.
Thank you, Chair. And I think just a little bit of a link really from the previous item you were discussing. I think there's a bit about how we all understand the different sort of sectors and industries that we all work within, and understand how those companies operate. And I was just sort of thinking about Kia really, because it's very easy, isn't it, to say, well, we're not seeing we're not seeing the outputs we want, we're not seeing improvements on the network. But I think having them come in and explain the difficulties and issues that they have to deal with gives us a better understanding of why we see what we see, and why we an understanding why things are not done perhaps at the pace that we would like. And I think that came through quite a lot through the Housing Development Task and Finish group, and I'd like to think members sort of can relate to that. For example, when we talked about building control and that whole understanding that the sector isn't just about local authority building control officers. There's a whole private industry out there of approved inspectors, and they operate in a different way. And whilst we're all working to the same rules, there's a bit of a different interpretation of how that works. So, and it was really good having our building control officer coming along and explaining to members how that works. So to help them and enhance their understanding of the limitations we have in the industry at times, because we feel that we should be able to stop people doing things, and actually we can't always, because that work is being done by an approved inspector, and they have responsibility, so it's very difficult to enforce anything. And of course, if anyone's unhappy about works on buildings, they come to the local authority, don't they? They come to you as members, they come to us as officers, but actually we can't always influence and do something about that. So it's that shared knowledge, I think, that's came through the Housing Development Task and Finish group as well. So we were required to report back in a year's time, so that would be November 2024. But the chair wanted us to just really give an update on how far we've got and progress on the action plan. And I think that for us as officers been really helpful to just sort of have a bit of a think about where we are, because inevitably some things have got in the way around delivering some of those outputs. And what I actually produced was the action plan that we agreed back in November. I tried to provide for you a track change version. It apparently didn't come out on the website as well as it should have, but essentially you've got all the information, the update in front of you on that appendix, but it hasn't all. I wanted it all showing in red so you could see the changes really around the report. And the first item, if I just go through it, because there aren't that many items on the action plan, but if I just sort of talk through and explain where we've got to. So the first one was looking at the building control service and making sure that we sell the service so that we encourage residents to use our building control service. Of course, we think ours is great, and we have about 70% of the market, and of course we're going to be here forever. So if ever there's a problem with someone's property in the future, they can come to the council and then we can look at it and we can do something about it from a building control perspective. Of course, we can't do that if it's an approved inspector, if they've used an approved inspector. And equally for us as a council, it's sort of keeping money within the council as well. So if we have major developments or we have developments, you know, to housing schemes, then if our building control service is used, we would like to think that we do it very, very well and make sure that it's built safely and that there aren't any issues in the future. We can't enforce that, so we can't make our colleagues in property use our service, but we can make sure that our officers are at the table. So when we're having pre-application discussions about development, making sure that building control officers are in the room and they start to influence the development at an early stage. They start to look at things around fire prevention and all those things, and then there is a hope that that developer will use our services as well. So it's about an ongoing thing really, just trying to promote our building control service. The next item was a request to do a communications plan, so improving how we sell the service to the public, because again there's a lack of understanding by the public around, you know, if they're once in a lifetime have a development on their property, they're often led into using approved inspectors, and we want people to be more aware of actually how this works, because when problems do happen, they come to the local authority and then we can't do anything about it because they've used an approved inspector. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to produce the communication plan yet, and I have put a revised date of August, and the reason for that is that the building control officers, and you'll be aware of this through the Grenfell tower incident, there's been a complete change in the industry and a government requirement that all building control officers have to be at a certain competency level, otherwise they can no longer practice in the industry. What that means for us as a local authority is making sure everyone is competent by April, and they had to sit some serious exams to that. So that put a lot of pressure on the team since we first considered this action plan. Pleased to say that all our officers have got through their exams, thank goodness, because if they didn't, they could no longer do their job. And so, you know, it's quite a serious impact on the industry. And I also think that that's going to start having an impact on building control officers in the industry generally, and I think possibly we're going to see a few more improved inspectors go by the wayside, where they haven't invested in their staff the way local authorities have. So apologies that that's slightly delayed, but it is still very much on our radar to get the communication plan together and do more sort of social media around using building control services. The next item was to make sure that building control is in the programme of induction training for all elected members when we get to the elections in 2025, and that'll be built into the programme. The next item was to support Cornovian Star Housing to ensure that to look at the opportunity around creating their own open space management company. And members will remember that you were taken on a tour and we had a look at some sites where the open space hadn't been finished anywhere near as well as we would have expected. And it's to look at you know, residents are then they have management companies that take over that retain the open space, and then they have significant amounts of money they have to pay to management companies annually, and that, you know, is something that's not in our control as a local authority, but we're aware of it, and actually they're paying high management leasehold costs, and they're not seeing the open space completed or up to the sort of standard that they would like. Members asked us to explore with Cornovi and Star Housing whether there was an opportunity for them to set up a management company, and Harpreet Rao has been looking at that with Star and Cornovi, and they are looking at the options around how they structure that. There's two elements to it really, so they're looking at setting up a management company, so Star Housing would be the management company. There's two elements to it. One is to ensure that they do a service charge review. So look at what that would look like, because that was the main concern, one of the main concerns as well for members, about how much people were being charged and being out of control. And then looking at the legal structure to be a management agent for the management company. So that would be set up by Cornovi. So that they are looking at bringing all that together and taking that to Star's board by Q3 financial year. So we're looking towards the end of this calendar year really to see some outcomes for that. But actually that's a significant piece of work, and I think would be a really, really positive thing if that comes off. The next item was to proceed with a dedicated officer that was like green infrastructure officer. Pleased to say that we've managed to sort of gather some funding together, which is obviously very difficult at the moment, and recruit. And we have a particularly talented person in the role. So the benefits of that are going to be hopefully better designed open spaces and having an influence over our green infrastructure. That person's been in post for about a month now, so that feels like a really, really positive outcome. And then finally, one of the sort of tricky areas is the review of Section 38 and 278 agreements. This is an area that I've shared with members before. It's been really, really tricky, where we've tried to, it's been under-resourced for a very long time, and will probably continue to be. And we've got to look at different ways of how we can ensure that 278 and 38 agreements, that we have a structure in place better. And this is a lot of work around setting the right templates, making sure that developers don't do work on our network without making sure that they've submitted the correct forms, the correct templates, and they've paid the fees that they need to pay. And we have been for a very, very long time on the back foot on that. So it's about trying to deal with the legacy cases we've got, which is very difficult, bring in some temporary resources, which we have done, and really, really get all the sort of templates and all the sort of structures and processes in place so that we can then be in a better position to be able to ensure that when people are working on our network, that all this sort of right things are in place and that the agreements are in place, so that when people move into their homes, they have a better understanding around when their roads will be completed and they're not living in half-finished estates. Hopefully that's sort of helpful, Chair, just to explain where we've got to with it all so far.
Thank you, Tracy. A lot of work going on. Chris, I don't know if you want to say anything as portfolio holder, or if you want to listen, or I should have said actually, Tracy, when you came on, that you'll be assistant director of place, because I didn't say that to anybody who didn't know. Thank you for joining us. Any questions, anyone? Yes, David?
Yes, just thanks for the report. But on recommendation 1, I think it is. I mean, have we got any data on the various council schemes that are going on, and how many actually use the building control service of the council, and how many don't?
I don't have the data to give you here and now, but it's something we can share, absolutely, because I think we as officers in my building control services would embrace any support and help by members to make sure that other parts of the council use our service. I mean, we are a sort of almost we function a little bit like an arm's length company of the council, and this is about securing jobs. So if we can encourage all the different parts of the council to use our service, then and any levers that we can that can be provided to help that, then we'd welcome it. So we can provide the stats around how many schemes they use, that council use our service, our building control service, because I think that would be it'd be interesting to see what percentage, and see whether there's some further work we need to do there.
There are no questions. That's all right. On, I think, page 3 of the recommendations is about the new appointment.
Yes.
Johnson. Is it possible for them to? I don't know if it's possible for them to come to this meeting or something.
I was going to ask actually the end of the meeting what the name of that officer is.
Yeah, I just wondered if they could come to the meeting so we could discuss some of the issues and see what their plans are.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I think if it perhaps comes with the next report, and you'll have time to settle in then. I think we can invite them to that meeting at the time. Yeah, good idea.
And lastly, just on the last recommendation, I know that estates in Shrewsbury, like Sutton Grange, have suffered for a long time because they still haven't been finished, despite people living there for a number of years now. And I wonder, is there a priority system involved? Because some of these estates, it's 3, 4, 5 years or so that they've been living on with roads which are not properly made up. Is there a priority system when you're looking at actually trying to get the developers to finish them off? Is there a priority system for getting action?
We're there has, I think, historically been those that shout the loudest. We've been trying to, I think the team has been so under-resourced, and I know that's a difficult thing to share, but it has for a very long time. And so there is quite a long list of schemes. I think there's also there needs to be an understanding of how long it takes. So it does take a number of years for the 38 and 278 works, to the agreements and the bonds, and then the work to take place. So generally you don't find all the works completed when the first occupier moves into their property, and that's sort of quite a common thing across the whole of the country. And dare I say, there are some authorities that are significantly worse than Shropshire in terms of estates being incomplete. So I think the answer is there is a list. We are working through that list. We have taken on some additional temporary resource, which is difficult in the current climate, but we have taken on resource. We have tried in the past, so over the last sort of 18 months, we've had a number of agency people that have come in and have worked for us for a short time. We had one officer that was excellent, Cliff, unfortunately had a heart attack and passed away at a very young age. So we've had some really difficult things to deal with. We've had an officer that came that was disastrous and we had to let them go very quickly. So it's been quite a challenging area of work in a landscape where it's very difficult to get qualified highway engineers in the first place. So, we've had posts that we've had out to advert for 2 years and we haven't had a single applicant. So a lot of people in highways are in the private sector. And I think that's just sort of the reality of the situation we're finding ourselves in. So we're trying to work with some housing developers better, having sort of meetings with them to talk about all their schemes they've got and see how we can help to move some of them forward from a 38 278 perspective. So we're just trying different things and different ideas really to try and unlock some of the problems we've got, as well as using the resource as best as we possibly can. And everybody will be familiar with Gemma Lawley and Mark Wotton. They are key people really in that team, and we're hanging on to them as well, to make sure that they have the time and capacity to be able to deal with some of the knotty issues we've got around some legacy cases.
Thank you, Tracy. I've got Rosemary, Gary and Roger. So Rosemary first.
Thank you, Joyce. Tracy, thank you for this. I've got a question that follows on from what David had just mentioned about the length of time from development being pretty much finished, development being pretty much finished and final adoption. The estate David mentioned is in my patch, Sutton Grange. It's actually 7 years since it began. The last 2 houses were built about 18 months ago, but there was a massive gap of about 4 years between the whole estate being built. It's still not adopted fully. And hopefully at the moment, yesterday I got the latest date that the adoption, that the roads will be ready. is in June. Nobody wants to know the details of my daily work, I'm sure. But I just wonder whether developers, that's a large national developer, I wonder whether there's any kind of consequences for a developer letting us down so badly in terms of letting the residents of Shropshire down so badly by, I mean, they actually vacated this site for something like 18 months and it was impossible to get answers from them. So I mean, it's a very poor service to the people who've bought homes from them, but it's something that I think shouldn't happen. Of course, there are many things that do happen that shouldn't. But I just wonder if there are any consequences for developers who behave in such a cavalier manner.
Any consequences, Tracy?
That there aren't, and strangely enough, I was asked yesterday whether we could stop granting planning permission to particular developers if they don't perform, and the answer is no. Is no, we can't do that. So I'm afraid we still have to continue to deal with each of their application on its individual merits. So there aren't penalties. We just have to work. We have to work with them to try and get the estates completed as soon as possible. But I think there's an expectation that it happens within months, and it doesn't. It does tend to take years actually for all the housing, the roads and all the infrastructure to be completed. So I think there is a little bit about managing expectations of our residents when they're moving into new properties. The problem that you find is that there's layers and layers of insurance as a consequence of that. So you know, residents are having to sort of insure themselves against problems as they move into their properties because the roads are not done, and there's a whole sort of layer of issues that flow from estates not being adopted as quickly as we would like. We have explored all sorts of things, like, for example, whether we could impose a planning condition on a developer to say that, you know, by a certain number of houses occupied, that the roads have to be complete. But I just, you know, that is unlikely to stand up if we were challenged on appeal. So, you know, again, it's, you know, any ideas anybody has, we're happy to explore, but you know, it's been an issue for tens and tens of years, and dare I say, some councils are, you know, that I'm aware of, that have been 15-20 years adopting some estates. So I'm not saying that's better for us because we're only 7 years, because that's still not good enough. But I think it's just to put it into context, really, that you know, and we do all we can, but I think it's, you know, that it is a lot down to resource as well.
I think communication is really important. A lot of people blame the council, thinking it's our fault we haven't done the roads and we should be doing them. We can't do them until they're adopted, can we? So yeah. Then I'll move to Gary.
Thank you, Tracy. I also wanted to ask about the item of Star and Cornoby looking at the possibility of setting up a company to manage public open space on their developments or their homes, where their homes are. I mean, this is a system that's largely discredited in new developments. It's not looking good generally as a sort of system to go forward, and that, in my opinion, the right way forward is to do what we talked about in the previous item, for that public open space to actually be taken over by the local town or parish council and administered in that way. I think it feels to me that if we go down a route like this of encouraging this kind of management, for me, it seems like you're setting up a kind of double structure where people who live in some areas have public space management maintenance provided by their local town, parish council, or even Shropshire council as part of their council tax. But then other people who have the misfortune, if you like, to have a management company imposed on them, would then have to pay a second maintenance fee, which I think it feels unfair to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, you know, officers totally agree with that. You know, the whole national issue around what was called fleecehold, you know, is a massive issue really for the industry, and the government has tried to wrestle with that a number of times. I think for us, in terms of how we go forward, I mean, historically, as I understand it, there was decisions made in Shropshire for parish and town councils not to take on open space, because of the you know, the implications of that financially as well, for parish and town councils. There is an opportunity to explore that more, but I think the starting position is we're not in control of that decision. So it is the developer's decision as to whether they are prepared to hand it over to a parish or town council, or whether they want to set up their own management company themselves. So, you know, I think it's just understanding the starting point is not our choice. It is for us to try and influence that, and that's at the early stages, really, to talk to developers about whether town and parish councils would be able to take on the open space, and then of course understanding whether they're willing to as well, because some may not want to take on the burden of that, of course. So I think it's that relationship bit that's quite important, with town and parish councils and developers, to sort of understand what's the right model. But you know, more and more developers have been just chucking it over into a management company or setting up their own management company, and keeping the open space. And then we see some of the issues that we viewed on, that you as members, Task and Finish group viewed on site, actually, that are problematic, where, you know, developers have gone bust and the management company's gone bust and the open space is left as it is, and that's not good for the residents. So it's a complex area. I think all we can do is to support Cornovy and Star in looking at setting up a management company, because certainly that gives an opportunity, and again we can then try to encourage developers to use that in the future if that does happen.
Thank you. If we can all try and be succinct with our questions and answers, that'd be really good. Gary.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's gone back to the issue you have in employing officers and staff, and you said that the private sector is too lucrative and too good for them to go to. We have an issue with building control, where you say that 70% of our building control competes with 30% of the open market. Surely there's a situation there that we could buy into the open market for officers to oversee these agreements, for private companies to oversee these agreements on an open market basis.
It's something we could explore, you know, and I think there are companies out there that do look at that whole work around supporting local authorities to set up, you know, the 278 and 38 agreements, and we have been in discussion with one of those, but I think the ideal for us is to be able to have staff that work in Shropshire Council that do this work for us, and we hold on to those that we have. You know, dare I say, I think certainly the team do get quite a bashing at times from developers and from members of the public around the estates, and yet they work their socks off at trying to sort of bring these agreements forward as quickly as possible. But you know, I think it's a wider industry issue, and you know, trying to attract highway engineers, because they really need to be highway engineers, into the private sector at the moment is very, very difficult, when you're looking at, you know, them being paid in the region of £900 to £1,000 a day in the private sector. So that's the reality of the situation, as opposed to officers, you know, working for the council and earning £45,000 a year. So, you know, I'm afraid it's a market, and building control has also been hit a little bit like that as well. And we've used market supplements and retention packages to keep our building control officers. And it's something I think we need to explore more for highway officers as well.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Gary. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. In some of the answers, there's statements made that other local authorities are worse than ours. Is there a table where we can actually see, as a scrutiny committee, where Shropshire is compared with other local authorities? Also, can a table be prepared so each member can see in their area which streets are still waiting to be adopted and which are not adopted? I asked a question at a meeting last week about dog control orders, the public open space order that Cabinet approved unanimously. If there is an unadopted road, or if it's a private estate that is being managed by a building company, what is the status of that with as regards to dog control orders? Can visitors to that area who walk their dogs be fined if their dogs leave a mess and they do not pick them up or not? I do not know, because it isn't public open space. It is controlled space under private ownership. The roads themselves may be still not adopted. I asked a question, couldn't get the answer last week, but also finally, some parish councils have taken over open space on payment of a fee from the appropriate developer. And it may be something that new house owners should be told some way, maybe via a tax one, that if they contacted their developer and when they're buying their house, to get a commitment from the developer that they'll approach their local parish council, town council to take it over. But I'd be interested to have some tables and also the answer to the dog control orders.
Definitely, and jumping on that one, I think one of the things, the recommendations that came forward from the task and finish group was about communicating with the public about our building control, the risks of not using ours. And I think all the things we're talking about here and the pitfalls, really, we need to get a programme together of informing the public. And I know I'm not very good at IT, I don't know if anybody is brilliant here, but you know, there are platforms out there where you can actually put a word in, like if you've got housing building control Shropshire, where you can come up first if you do it right. And I'm just wondering, are we using those sort of techniques so that we get out there first when people are looking for someone? I think Ed's having a go now, seeing what comes up. Yeah. But if you want to answer Roger's questions first, Rose tagging on to the back of his.
Okay. So the unadopted and private road endpoint, Roger, is that the dog control order. I mean, again, it's not my area of expertise. All I would say is that if it's unadopted or it's private, if it's a private road, then those that own the road are responsible for what happens on that road. So I suppose there's an issue around if your dog does foul on their land, then it's like them coming into your front garden and doing it. So I would say that would be the normal sort of response I would give, but I'm not a legal expert on that, and that's something that our legal officers would have to advise on. In terms of the league tables, I'm not sure there is a league table around who can be worse at 278 and 38 agreements actually. But what we certainly can do is provide for Scrutiny Committee a list of which roads are adopted and which ones aren't. I'm hoping it's not an enormous task and it's something we can pull off quite quickly. So whilst I sort of put that offer that we will try and provide that information for you, but I think it's on the basis that it's not going to take someone a month of their life really trying to pull all the information out. I'm hoping it's something we've got on a system that we can do fairly easily, and I think Councillor Barry, you're right about that communication bit. I think there's a common thread through a number of these items as part of this task and finish group, really, about how we communicate better, how we sort of share as well with the public the things we can control and the things we can't control. And I'm hoping that through the sort of positive dialogue we've had with members on the task and finish group and have continued to with members of Scrutiny, that it's helped them understand a little bit more about what we can influence and what we can't influence, because we as officers as well, it's awful for us to see estates that have not been finished properly as well. It's a huge load of work for us, it's a headache, and it's not about placemaking, and that's what we're about really. It's about providing great environments for people to live in, and it upsets us as well when we see that not happening. But it's about how it's the controls we can put in place, and not always as straightforward as we'd like to think they are. And I think we'll continue to work on this, and we'll bring some further information back in November when we report on the action plan fully.
Okay, and can I make a suggestion to Councillor Schofield, who'll fall off his seat now? Would it be possible, or would you want to put out some sort of press release saying about basically the pitfalls that people fall into by not using Shropshire Council building control. I mean, you can do that now. You don't have to wait for all this stuff. I think that would be very, very positive.
I think we could do that, Joyce. And the other thing,
yeah.
The other thing, Chair, there's no reason I don't think why the council can't name and shame the developers either.
Yeah. Is that legally? I think you'd have to take advice off
Yeah.
Miranda first, I think. But we take advice on that. But I think there are a lot of things that we've all mentioned that if the public were aware of, as you say, usually people only come in contact with building control once in their lives, probably twice, unless you're a builder. Yes. So anyway, I think we've actually finished there. I think it's been very helpful, and I look forward to your next report and hope all the action will be actions. Thank you both very much. I don't think anybody's got any more questions. No? Very good meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. The next meeting, is there, wherever I put it, 11th of July. It's the 11th of July at 2 o'clock.
Can I put my photos in?
Yes, you can.
Should be in somewhere.
If you can get us stuff, that would be
That's
great.
somewhere hot.
It's the one.
Right.
Thank you very